Hello and welcome to Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, the talk show that spotlights HR professionals and talks about all things HR. Today, we're diving into a topic that every leader, every employee, and every organization will face at some point. That's crisis management. Whether it's a sudden workplace conflict, an organizational shakeup, or a high-stakes situation involving people, how we respond as HR professionals matter. Joining me today is Dr. Cathryn Stout, a true expert in the field, someone who doesn't just study crisis management, but lives it, applies it, and teaches others how to lead with calm, clarity, and purpose when the pressure is on. How are you, Dr. Cathryn Stout?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am a big fan of your show.
Oh, well, thank you so much. She's a big fan. You hear that? Well, I am a big fan of yours. We've been acquainted for some years now. And of course, your mom is Tawan Stout Mitchell. And we've been acquainted for a while. And I am just delighted to have you on this show today. So let's dive right in. So you are widely recognized as an expert in the arena of crisis management. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what is it about this topic that brings you passion?
Let's jump right into these questions. Who is Cathryn Stout? I am a 20-year veteran of public relations and media relations.
Yes.
I have covered every crisis from A to Z, from accidents to zoning disputes. And I like to say that crisis management, I didn't choose crisis management chose me.
Crisis management chose you.
Yeah. You know, I'm a historian by training. I have a PhD in history. And so I'm always thinking about the moment and the archive at the same time.
Yes.
And having that perspective is so important when you're handling a crisis.
Yes.
But also I am working on a Master's of Divinity.
Okay.
I am a theology student at Candler School of Theology at Emory University. And many people go to theology school to learn more about pastoral care.
Yes.
But I am there because I want to learn more about Christian writing and community care. And crisis management, when done well, is a form of community care.
Oh, wow. Did you hear that? Crisis management is a form of community care, not just organizations abroad, right? Okay. Well, listen. So you talked about being in crisis management for a number of years. So what exactly is crisis management? Tell us about that. And why is it important for organizations to understand it and be prepared for crisis?
I like to keep it very simple. Crisis management is how your organization or company responds to a threat or disruption.
Okay.
Period.
All right.
Let's keep it simple, right? But it's so important to have plans and procedures and protocols in place because in a moment of crisis, what you don't want to do is to create a secondary crisis, a crisis of confidence. Okay. And so when there is a moment of crisis, people are looking to the head of the organization and the team to make sure that we can trust you to move us forward, to see the future and to handle the issue. And so it's so important that you have that team and that you have those protocols and procedures in place so that a disruption doesn't become a crisis of confidence.
Oh my goodness. So it's important to know as an employee, for instance, that you trust your leaders enough to navigate through this crisis. And so what you don't want to do is to create a secondary what?
A secondary crisis.
A secondary crisis.
Yeah,
okay, of confidence. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll talk more about that. So crisis management, I'm sure it has, it's a theory to it. So I'm sure there are some stages of crisis management. Can you walk us through what are the basic stages of crisis management and what can HR professionals do to be able to lead that?
Well, HR professionals are partners with your communications team or your comms team. Okay. And so they have to walk hand in hand in a moment of crisis. I love my HR professionals and I could not do this work without them. But when I think about the stages or how we approach a crisis, I like to use the acronym ACT. ACT.
ACT.
ACT, very simple. I'm all about keeping it simple, right?
Keep
The
it
crisis is complicated enough. Let's keep it simple, right? And
yes.
there are going to be layers. So A, assess and address. You need to assess the situation, figure out what's going on and what can we do to address it immediately.
Okay.
C is to communicate. Tell people what you did and also what you're going to do.
Okay.
There's usually something you need to do immediately, but also something you need to do long term. And so you want to communicate. And
yes.
T, this is where we talk about track.
Track it.
Track what you did and communicate that back out with transparency, right?
Okay.
This is what I said I was going to do, and this is what we did.
Okay.
This is how well it worked, and this is the continuing work that we have to do.
Yes.
So ACT, assess and address. C, communicate. T, track.
See, can't you tell she's an educator at large? Act. Listen, we're gonna have that in our minds. So when we talk about crisis management in the HR field, we're gonna talk about acting, right? But act. I love that. Assess, communicate, and track. I love that. I love that. So so I know we've seen situations that go south, and we've seen it play out in most of the time in media or in social media. You see those crises play out. So what are some of the biggest mistakes organizations may be faced when they deal with a crisis?
The first thing I always like to tell a leader is that crises are part of the life cycle of a company or organization.
Okay.
We're all going to face a moment of crisis. They're part of our personal life, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to face a crisis in our organization. We're all going to face a crisis in our company. One of the biggest mistakes that organizations and companies make is to not plan in advance. So if I'm telling you in advance that this is part of the life cycle, then you need to have a rapid response team or a crisis communications team set up before the crisis.
You know,
it's just like having your natural disaster plans.
Yes.
It's just like having your substitute building plans if there was something to happen to the building. You have to have crisis management and crisis communications plans. So you need a team, you need a rapid response team or a crisis communication, crisis management team.
Okay.
You need procedures and protocols set up that are specific to your industry, and every industry is different.
Okay.
What are some likely scenarios in your industry? And if you don't know what those are, read the news, right? The news is full of them, right?
Read the news. Yes.
Right? So what are some likely scenarios or some scenarios that other organizations in your industry have gone through? How would we respond to that scenario given our values and our mission?
Yes.
And then the second, the last mistake that I think companies make is not having a coalition.
Okay.
Right? So HR is about making sure that our internal partners are taken care of.
Absolutely.
But companies also need to be in community with external partners.
Yes.
And coalitions are so important because in a moment of crisis, there might be something you need from your partner in the industry or your partner in another industry. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes that companies and organizations have is that they don't plan for the crisis.
Oh, wow. Rapid response and a rapid response team. You think with the end in mind, right? And you're right. You have all of these other things we prepare for in the organization, but know that it's coming, right? And prepare for that by having people in place, procedures in place, right?
Right.
And also act. I love that. I love that. So you talked a little bit about communication in the crisis and how important it is. So how effective communication, how does it play a role in the successful navigation of a crisis?
That's a great question. I always like to go back to that secondary crisis, right? We don't want the initial disruption or threat to create a secondary crisis, a crisis of confidence. And that is where communication is so important. That is where you build that trust and transparency. Look, when there is a moment of crisis, Your partners, your employees,
Yes.
your external partners, they want to know 3 things. What happened? What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do?
And did you do what you said you were going to do, and did it work? Right?
I love that.
And so that's where communication matters, right? Tell me what happened. Tell me what you're going to do about it. And then track. Did you do what you said you were going to do? And did it work? And so really, we can turn crisis into opportunity.
Right.
We can turn tension into transformation if we have that ongoing communication with our partners and with our employees.
All right, yes. Got to have that communication plan. And I love what the 3 things that most people and organizations want to know.
Right.
Those 3 things.
It's very simple. What happened? What did you do about it?
What did you do?
Did it work?
Did it work?
Right.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Listen, I want to go back to dealing with a crisis team and how that works in the workplace. So what are the key characteristics of a strong crisis management team? What do the players look like? Would it be people in the same department? But how would that look to have a well-balanced team?
Well-balanced. You are so good with this. Like, I think you're in crisis management too. Because that's exactly what you want. You want a well-balanced team. First of all, like I said, going back to the fact that you want to form the team before the crisis because you want that trust and relationship. In the moment of crisis, we need to be able to talk to each other quickly and honestly. And so you need that trust.
Trust.
But also you want people from different departments in your company or organization because they are going to have different standpoints. The way the legal department assesses a situation is going to be totally different from the way operations or HR assess a situation.
Yes.
So you want to have those people from different departments. And also, if possible, you want to have people from different levels of the organization.
Okay.
Of course, you're going to have the executives in the room, but do you have that person who represents the middle management or entry-level employee? Because you want to make sure that whatever plan you put in place is a plan that works for the total organization.
Okay.
So having people from different departments, but also having people from different levels and bringing them together when? Before the crisis to build that trust.
Absolutely. So they can maybe meet on a regular basis, get to know each other, get to mesh, and then I guess then their ideas are probably more cohesive,
Right.
because they've known each other and they work together as a team. I love that. Bringing all the players, everybody has a voice, all the voices that are important, right, into the situation. I do love that. So let's talk about level of urgency. So there are different levels,
Yes.
right? The fire alarm rings. That's urgency. COVID-19 was announced, right, one day, and all organizations had to transition to something that was different to them. So let's talk a little bit about how do you determine the level of urgency during a crisis, and how does that influence decision making overall?
Well, you know me, I like to keep it simple. Right?
All right, let's do it.
So I think about my 3 L's when I think about level of urgency.
Okay.
First, life-threatening.
All right.
If it's life-threatening, you have to move quickly.
Yes.
Right? The second thing is legal exposure. And that's when you
yeah.
want to have your legal counsel in the room to help us think through what is the legal exposure. Are we facing a lawsuit? Is this something that would be a settlement in the future? The level of legal exposure determines the level of urgency. And then the second thing, is this a limited or long-term disruption? So those are my 3 L's: life-threatening,
Life-threatening,
legal exposure,
legal exposure.
limited or long-term disruption.
Yes.
And now let me talk about limited or long-term disruption
Okay.
with some candor of something that I had to learn in my crisis management career.
Okay.
If it is a long-term disruption, then of course you want to have your crisis management team to assess the issue
Okay.
and come up with an immediate and a long-term plan. if it is a limited disruption.
Okay.
And this is where it can be hard.
Okay.
But if it is a limited disruption, sometimes it is best to deal with that privately so that you don't amplify the crisis.
Yes.
Sometimes the way we address or the way we address something or the way that we respond to an issue can actually make it bigger than it really was.
Than it really is. Okay.
And in this clapback culture,
Right.
we always want to respond, but sometimes the response can make it worse. So you have to ask your team, do we see this as a long-term or a limited disruption?
Yes.
And if it's a limited disruption, I don't ignore,
Yes.
but I monitor
Yes.
and sit back.
And so would that be the answer? Here's the crisis, we know it, but we're going to monitor at this point.
Exactly.
That would be the response.
And deal with it privately.
Yeah.
Because it is a moment to be in community with whoever is having the issue, whether it's an employee or an organization.
Yes.
But everything doesn't require a public response.
I see.
Some things require a private conversation.
Okay. I love that. When it's not big, like they say, if it doesn't fit, don't force it. You know, I used to say those type of things. But
I would
if
say
it's
don't
not,
amplify, right? Don't amplify if you don't have to, right?
Yeah. I used to say, making a mountain out of a molehill.
Making
maybe?
a mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that mother wit, right? We use mother wit in crisis, right? Because it matters, right?
Yeah. So looking back in history with organizations and how crises would occur, we have a whole nother playing field now. We have social media, and then we have public perception, right? So what role does social media and public perception play in crisis management?
I love that question of what role does social media play in crisis management. Social media has totally transformed the crisis management landscape.
Okay.
Today's crises are often digitally amplified and they're faster moving.
Okay. Yes.
And that is because of social media.
Yeah.
The rate of reputational harm can increase, but also the rate of reputational repair can increase if you handle it correctly. And so what social media does is it digitally amplifies it. It makes it faster moving, but it also can make the repair faster moving. If once again, you have your scenarios, your templates, your team in place. When? Before the crisis.
I love it.
Before the crisis occurs,
yeah.
right?
I believe that. And so when you're trying to, trying to calm a situation and it's gone public, what should be the frequency of social media posts maybe? And what does that messaging look like? If we're trying to calm the waters, what does that look like?
Well, it's all about context, and it goes back to our 3 L's, right? Life-threatening, legal exposure, limited, or long-term disruption. We always like to take a layered approach. Sometimes the first layer is just to monitor.
Yes.
Sometimes the first layer is to respond. It just depends on what the situation is. But it's so important to have a layered approach. When we talk about a major crisis, that's a fast-moving crisis, oftentimes we don't have all the information in the moment, but what the public and your employees want to know is that it's on your radar. Right?
Yes.
And that you are doing something.
Yes.
And so when we talk about an urgent crisis or a major crisis, your first statement is to say, we are aware, this is the immediate steps we have taken.
Yes.
And we will follow up in 3 hours with more information or whatever that time frame is that's reasonable.
Yes.
And guess what? You have to follow up.
And you have to follow up.
You have
in
to follow
3
up.
hours.
Right.
In 3 hours.
The other thing I want to say that's very important in a moment of crisis, you need to talk to your employees, you need to talk to the public, but you also have to talk to your different partners in the community. Do you have a board of directors?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Do you have major funders?
Yes.
They need phone calls. right?
That's the difference.
They need phone calls, right?
They shouldn't find out about it in social media, right?
They should not find out about it in a detached email or social media or the news, right?
Yes.
And so while you have, and this is why it's so important to have a team. So while you have one person communicating with the employees and with the public, you also need to have 2 or 3 other people who are strong company spokespeople, calling the funders.
Yes.
Calling the board of directors, letting them know it's on our radar. This is what we're doing.
Yes.
Here's my personal number.
Yes.
Call me anytime.
Yes.
And the job of those people is to talk to the people who make those influential decisions or who fund the organization.
Yeah, so they could be part of your rapid response team, right? Absolutely. I believe, Dr. Cathryn, that not only you're an educator in crisis management, but I think you're a fixer. She's a fixer. She's a fixer. She is. Hey, if you want to get in contact with her, we're gonna have her to tell us how, but later on. But you're a fixer.
You know, as you know, my father is firefighter. He's a retired firefighter. So, you know, maybe it is that firefighter in me. My stepfather is a firefighter. My biological father does auditing. So both of them in their way, you know, deal with things when they are off track.
Yes.
And then my mother had a lifetime career in public service.
Absolutely,
right?
she did.
And so I think I get it honest in that way. But I think one of the common misconceptions about crisis management is that it's about putting out statements.
Yes. Okay.
And really, crisis management is about strategy. It's about, can I de-escalate the situation before it becomes a public problem?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of strategy that goes on in the background. And anyone who's in crisis management or crisis communication knows that our biggest wins and our biggest milestones we can't put on our resume.
Right.
Because those are the issues that the public never found out about, right?
Right.
And so crisis management is about fixing and solving in the background before it becomes a public issue.
Listen, we're talking to Dr. Cathryn Fixer Stout today on Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, and we are learning so much. Okay, all right, let me give us a real life example of a company maybe or individual who handled a crisis really well. And what can we learn from them?
Sure. I'll give you 2. I'll give you one quick and then one a little bit more detailed.
I got a bonus.
All right. A company who I always follow what they do in a moment of crisis in their kind of communication strategy and approach in general. Here in Memphis is St. Jude.
Okay.
St. Jude is textbook for always staying on mission and putting out values-based statements.
Okay.
So if you're looking for an organization to follow, put St. Jude on your radar.
Okay.
An individual who I believe handles crisis really well is President Barack Obama. President Barack Obama is textbook calm under pressure.
Yes.
He also makes you feel like you can empathize, that he is there with you in the situation. And he always stays true to his values and his mission. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If we think back in history, and like I said, I'm a historian, so I'm always thinking about the moment and the archive at the same time, right?
Yes.
If we think back in history, 2009, the beer summit. I don't know if you remember this, but in 2009, senior scholar Henry Louis Gates was arrested on his own front doorstep in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Barack Obama is the first Black president, and this is a moment that could become amplified racial tension in the country. You have a noted African American historian arrested by a white policeman, James Crowley. What Barack Obama did so well in that moment is that he de-escalated. And this is why we call it the beer summit, because he invited both of them to the White House to have a conversation in a beer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, I do remember that now.
Right?
It was on the lawn.
Right. So there were some photos and there was a media moment. But it was also so true to who President Barack Obama is.
Yes.
He is one who believes in pluralism. He is one who believes in democracy. And he truly believes that conversation can move us from tension to transformation. What he did in that moment was to give the country a model of how we can deal with disputes. And so it stayed true to who he was, and he de-escalated the situation. And that's why I think that moment was handled so well. And as a historian, I have to tell you, the handcuffs that were used in that situation were donated to the Smithsonian. And now they are an artifact of American history to talk about not only the struggle, but also the opportunity.
If you had one thing to say to the audience, or one thing to say to the public about crisis management, what would it be?
I think you know what it was. Before the crisis. I can't emphasize that enough. Have your team in place, your rapid response or your crisis management team, your coalition that is beyond your company or organization, and some procedures or protocols based on likely situations. Have those in place before the crisis. When the moment of crisis hits, and once again, crises are part of the life cycle of all organizations and all companies. When the moment of crisis hits, it will help you feel more prepared if you have the team and the protocols in place. You'll have to make some adjustments. You'll have to make some adaptations depending on the particular situation. But it's so much better to start from something than to start from nothing. And the other thing I would say is, don't just have those plans and procedures made and sit them on a shelf. Review them quarterly. You know, when we were in school, we practiced fire drills. You know, twice a semester, once a semester, right?
We did,
you should be reviewing these scenarios quarterly because staff changes. You know, you might have new people who join the team. The size of your organization could change. The scope of your organization could change. So you want to review these quarterly and just kind of build it into the calendar of your organization.
Oh, I love this. Has been absolutely wonderful. Listen, it's going to be some people who want to get in contact with you. How would they do that?
Well, people are welcome to visit me on my website, which is simply CathrynStout.com. I made it very simple because I like to keep it simple. So that's www.CathrynStout.com.
I tell you, you need to get in contact with this fixer. Wow, we have learned so much on the topic of crisis management today. As HR professionals, always remember, crisis doesn't define you, your response does. Stay calm, stay prepared, and lead with purpose. Be sure to watch a new episode of Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, the first of every month on the YouTube channel of the same name, and on Comcast Xfinity, channels 17 and 1091, Monday nights from 8 to 8:30 p.m. Please know you can watch Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen and prior episodes at any time. Go to the YouTube channel and type in the talk show title. Be sure to subscribe, no fee, and click on the notification bell. This is HR TV. I'm Dr. Deneen, and I want to talk HR with you. HR forever. See you next time.